Jason, does this game mean anything in regards to recruiting?
Yeah, but probably not as much as people would think. You know, Clemson doesn't do a whole lot of in-state recruiting, period, anymore. But 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 when you do, you like to have this is a win you like to have in your back pocket and be able to tout out on the recruiting trail. And if you don't win it, it's going to be used against you. Absolutely. But I don't think it hurts as much as people think it hurts. If you start losing 3, 4, 5 in a row, that's a whole different ball game. But if you lose one here, one there, I just don't think it hurts that much, particularly when Clemson doesn't recruit the state of South Carolina very heavily to start with.
So, Jason, if we looked at the top players in the state of South Carolina, how many of those players would be at the level that Clemson would be looking at them?
Uh, it just depends. Most years, one or two, maybe three. There's really one guy at the top of the rankings in this state in this current class or the 2025 class. So he's a senior right now, or excuse me, he's a junior right now. So there's really only one kid who's out there that they're really in state right now, and that's defensive tackle Amari Adams. He's from right here where I live. And the thing is, in this state, to me, in my experience, it kind of comes down to who you grew up rooting for in most cases, man. If a kid grew up rooting for South Carolina, he's far more likely to end up there than he is at Clemson. If he grew up rooting for Clemson, he's far more likely to end up at Clemson. And from my perspective, on the side of the state that I live on, which is the eastern side of the state, far more South Carolina fans than Clemson fans. Clemson has a hard time recruiting this side of the state, although they did come down here and pluck Adam Randall out of Myrtle Beach. But I in general, I'd say there's one or two guys. Cam Pringle was one of the top players in the state in the current recruiting class. He ended up at South Carolina. Same thing with Josiah Thompson, 2 offensive linemen. He ended up at South Carolina, one from Charleston, one from Dillon. So I mean, Clemson's always going to be or routinely be in on the top one or two guys, but outside of that's about it. As it sits right now, I think in 2025 that there's one guy who I think they really covet, and it's the defensive tackle from right here in Florence, Amari Adams. And I would say their chances of landing him are probably pretty low at this point. I think Georgia's in it, South Carolina's in it. I think Florida State's in it, but I don't think Clemson's in it as much as those other teams are.
Okay. I am looking at the top 10 players in the state for 2024, and I see South Carolina's gotten commits out of 5. And then I see Tennessee, Georgia Tech, Kentucky, and NC State. And then once you get to about the 10 to 15 range, you see East Carolina and Cincinnati and Coastal Carolina start popping up.
The North Carolina State one, that's got to be the quarterback from Richland Northeast.
I'm looking at Jamar Boston, wide receiver.
Okay, nope, I was wrong. I'll be dog. He's not ranked inside the top 10. I can't believe.
What's his name?
He's a 2026 kid. No wonder. Okay, never mind.
I can't remember
his name. He's the quarterback for Richland Northeast. He's a North Carolina State commit. I actually watched him play last weekend. That's why I asked that, and he surprised me. But I forgot he's a 2026 kid.
Okay,
and already committed.
Yeah, I was just curious to see how deep. I'm always curious. I'm not a recruiting guy, but I got to look at these rankings constantly, and I'm curious to see how deep these states are in high school talent. At what point you see the big Power 5 brands start to drop off, and with South Carolina, it looks about 15 deep before.
It varies from year to year. How many guys Clemson are in on heavily from this state. It's usually no more than 2 or 3. Sometimes it's only 1. I mean, again, right now for 2025, it looks like only 1. Off the top of my head, in 2024, man, I'm having a hard time remembering if there's anybody committed from this state right now. I don't think there is.
Not according to this list.
Yeah, I don't think there is. Well, we'll see if they get on. There's a kid from Belton Honia Path, Marquise Henderson. He's one of the better players in the state. Not sure exactly where he's ranked. We'll see if they get in on him late. He plays running back in high school, but Clemson's already got their running back for 2024. They took him it'd probably be as an athlete. They worked him out as a receiver back at camp during the summer. We'll see if they get in on him, but other than that, I don't think they're going to target anybody else in this state. Although they did go after the 3 offensive linemen. I don't want to gloss over that fact. They had 3 offensive linemen all in state, and all 3 of those guys ended up at South Carolina. That Clemson pursued heavily, which although I didn't think they ever had any shot at landing Cam Pringle or Josiah Thompson, I always thought those guys were headed to South Carolina. Blake Franks is a different story though. He's from right there in Greenville, right in Clemson's backyard. And it looked like Clemson was in the driver's seat for a while, and he ends up at South Carolina too. So, the Clemson took their shot with 3 offensive linemen in this state, in this class, and they struck out on all 3.
Jason Priester, allClemsonTigers.com. That's your destination for Clemson football coverage. Basketball's started, of course, and on through baseball season, everything that you need there with Clemson athletics. Jason, again, have a happy Thanksgiving, and I appreciate you being here as always.
Yes, sir. Enjoy the holidays, man. Always a pleasure.